The plot structure is like a blueprint of a story. So let's see how to use a plot structure to build your castle. Welcome authors to Next Level Writing. In this video, we will be investigating the 7-point plot structure and how you can use it to write your next story. Before we begin, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you like this video and want to see more like it, make sure to check out the Next Level Writing website. The link is in the video description below. A mega shout out to all the students at Greytown School and D Random for requesting the video. Thank you for your support. Now it's time to get plotting. The 7-point plot structure was highlighted by an author named Dan Wells. Not only does the plot structure clearly outline the necessary points of a story, it also can be manipulated so that the writing order is different to the final story order. The 7 points in their final order are hook, plot turn point 1, pinch point 1, midpoint, pinch point 2, plot turn 2, and finally the climax resolution. Before we see how these can be used to write a draft, let's look at each of them so that we know what needs to be included in each point. To make this easier, we will use the story of The Lion King as an example of how these points look. First, the hook. This is the protagonist's starting point, where you can spend time explaining who, what, when, where, and why. In The Lion King, the hook is the opening scene and the interaction between Scar and Mufasa. From the hook, it is clear that Scar wants to be king and is willing to do anything to get what he wants, even kill. Next is plot turn 1. This point sets in motion events that will force the protagonist to move from the beginning to the midpoint. Usually, some level of conflict is introduced that impacts or changes the protagonist's world. Plot turn 1 occurs in The Lion King after Scar fails to kill Simba so that he can become the next in line for the throne. This is when he decides to kill both Mufasa and Simba to secure the power he desires. Next is pinch point 1. A pinch point is when the stakes of the adventure are emphasized and a pressure is applied. This is often the time that the antagonist is introduced. Since we have already been introduced to Scar, pinch point 1 is when we see Scar's power as a ruthless and cunning antagonist. It is here that he kills Mufasa and convinces Simba that he is responsible for his father's death. Next, we have the midpoint. About halfway in the story, the protagonist moves from being reactive to proactive. They determine they must do something to stop the antagonist. The midpoint in The Lion King is when Simba meets Timon and Pumbaa and for the first time is not concerned with becoming king. He discovers that he has the capacity to make his own decisions and chooses to try and ignore his past. Now that we have passed halfway, it is time to go towards the ending. Pinch point 2 is where more pressure is applied to the protagonist and the story takes the ultimate dive. The protagonist is at their darkest moment and there is a feeling that everything is lost. Pinch point 2 occurs in The Lion King when Nala stumbles upon Simba, Timon and Pumbaa and explains the horrendous conditions at the Pride Lands under Scar's leadership. Simba refuses to help and calls out to his father, indicating he's still haunted by his past. Second last is plot turn 2. This point moves the story towards the end. The protagonist either gets or realizes that they have the final piece to achieve victory over the antagonist. Plot turn 2 occurs in The Lion King when Simba encounters Rafiki, who reveals to him that his father is alive in him. Simba realizes that he has a responsibility to take his place and embrace his destiny. Finally, we have the climax and resolution. This is the end of the story. Everything has been leading to this moment. Here, the protagonist achieves or fails to achieve victory over the antagonist. The climax resolution for The Lion King occurs when Simba and the Pride battle against Scar and the hyenas. They are victorious, and Simba takes his place as the rightful king. Now that we know what each of the 7 points entails, let's see how they can be used to write a draft for your next story. Here we can see how the final order is different to the draft writing order. Let's take a moment to look at this suggested writing order and consider why writing in this order may be helpful. Starting at the climax resolution helps you know how the story will end. It means that every other point can be written with the knowledge of where it will lead to. It also means that you can constantly review the ending to guarantee that it will be satisfying for the reader. Now that you know how the story will end, it is time to think about how it began. At the beginning of the story, the protagonist is not ready for the final ordeal. Something is missing, and over the course of the story, the protagonist must acquire this missing piece. Now that you know how the story will end and begin, it is time to think about the halfway point. It is here that the protagonist moves from being reactive to proactive. The first plot turn sits between the hook and midpoint, both of which you have already written. When writing, remember that it is during this time that the protagonist is reactive, so plot turn 1 is about giving the protagonist the push needed to become part of the story. With plot turn 1 finished, it is now time to focus on plot turn 2. This is about invigorating the hero before the resolution. Remember to answer this question: what does your protagonist need to approach the end? With the plot turns done, it is time to think about the pinch point. For pinch point 1, think about the antagonist and how their power can be revealed. Remember to only give a taste of their power. Do not overdo it. The final writing point is pinch point 2. Remember that this is the protagonist's lowest point and it is just before plot turn 2. Taking time to make sure that these 2 points are cohesive can help build suspense before the climax. And there you have it, the 7-point plot structure and how you can use it to write your next story. Thanks for watching, and please take a moment to like, subscribe, and check out the website. And as always, keep pushing yourself to take your writing to the next level.